In tonight's episode of MAFS, we saw this season's first dinner party and it did not disappoint. But before we get into it, if you love my reviews, hit that follow button and let's do this every night together. First up, we saw Elliot sit down with expert John to discuss why he bailed on his wife Lauren in less than 48 hours. Elliot explained that he had expected to be paired with a cute librarian girl, but instead he ended up with a Kardashian sister. He cited Lauren's inability to run from one side of the tennis court to the other as a reason why she was inadequate. John tried his best to provide some expert advice to Elliot, encouraging him to break his toxic habits. Lord Farquaad, Elliot, stared at him blankly and then said, "I disagree with everything you said." Of course you do, Farquaad. The only person you think is right is yourself. Meanwhile, Lauren was preparing to enter the dinner party on her own. She said she had no idea where Farquaad was and wasn't even sure if he'd show up. Next, we saw Katie, who was also preparing to enter the dinner party solo. After Tim pulled a runner on their honeymoon, Katie was also unsure if her husband would make an appearance. Karina and Paul were the first to enter, followed by Jamie and Dave, and Jackie and Ryan. All couples were a united front. That was until Katie entered alone. Katie revealed that Tim had woken her up on her wedding night to tell her that there wasn't a spark and ask if he should stay or not. Katie then asked the guys to rally around Tim if he made an appearance. She was worried that he might feel attacked. If only she knew, Tim was preparing his entrance and was planning to give his own version of events, aka lies. Before even entering the dinner party, Tim was already spreading his false narrative. He was like, "Katie didn't reach out to me. She didn't even text me once to ask if I was okay." The producer was like, "Okay, and did you text her?" Tim was like, "I didn't have her number, no." This guy is unbearable. The devil himself then made his entrance. Katie waited so patiently for him to approach her, but in the end, he said hello to everyone except her, and she ended up being the bigger person and approaching him. Tim's response was so infuriating. He looked at Katie and was like, "Oh, thanks for approaching me. You've really gone up in my books." As if this man has a book. Surely he can't read. I hate the implication of this. "You've gone up in my books." As though your approval is something that she needs. Like, you don't set the bar, Tim. And if you do, it's in hell. He then proceeded to dodge every question about his relationship. This guy has a bachelor in deflecting. Lauren then made her solo debut with no little Farquaad in sight. Lauren told the girls that the reason Elliot left was because he wants a 25-year-old, and they were naturally appalled. At the dinner table, Lauren started telling everyone her story, and Tim chimes in and is like, "Oh, I wouldn't have left you in that manner." The group was like, "Okay, well, what manner did you leave in then?" The group asked him about 1,000,000 times, and finally, he goes, "Oh, I feel like I'm the one who've made most of the effort." Katie then suggested Tim share with the group what he'd said about his type. This set Tim off like you wouldn't believe. He was like, "You've betrayed my trust. You've treated me so badly." And can I just say, it's actually scary seeing a narcissist at work. As soon as they feel threatened, as soon as they feel like they're going to be exposed for who they are, the gaslighting begins. You're all of a sudden the problem. You are the reason all of these terrible things are happening. You are such a terrible human being. Seeing it play out on a TV screen is triggering. I really don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. He immediately flipped the narrative, making himself the victim and Katie the perpetrator. This guy is like a textbook narcissist. And the really upsetting thing is that his manipulation tactics worked. Katie started crumbling. She was like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to." Katie is the victim, no doubt about it. But within 5 seconds, she was convinced that she was the problem. As someone who's experienced emotional manipulation and emotional abuse, it's so easy to see what was happening here as we watched it on our screens. The gaslighting was so obvious, and yet when you're in it, you just get sucked in. It's such a good example of how emotional manipulation, emotional abuse happens. But there was one person Tim couldn't fool. Queen Jamie. She listened to this entire conversation. She saw exactly what was happening and she was furious. She went straight to the girls. She told them what she'd saw, and then she let her army of queens go and fight the good battle. Karina approached Tim very diplomatically. She was asking him about what happened on the honeymoon. He was deflect, and eventually she got so annoyed. She was like, okay, well, I've heard a bunch of stuff from Jamie, so what's going on? The way this man's demeanor changed was a little bit terrifying. His face dropped. He was like, what did she say? What did she say? What did she say? A narcissist's biggest fear is that they'll be exposed. They want to be the good guy. They want everyone to love them and they want everyone to believe their narrative. So as soon as someone questions it, they don't like it. The terror on his face was palpable. Jamie was not backing down. She stands up and says to the group, if you heard what I heard down that end of the table. That's when Tim spat the dummy. He stands up, he walks out in half. He was so pissed because he felt exposed. And I don't know what he actually expected going on national television, but unfortunately for Tim, now the whole of Australia knows that he's not a nice guy. I would really appreciate it if you guys checked out my business, The Social Summit. It's Australia's first conference for content creators and brands. It's taking place in Melbourne this week on Thursday. And if you love my reviews, hit that follow button and I'll see you same time, same place tomorrow.